This is FBG Jen.
And FBG Kristen.
And I'm FBG Margot, host and producer. You're listening to the podcast that will help you keep a lid on the junk in the trunk and inspire you to live a happy and confident life.
Each episode, we chat with motivational experts and celebs and share our own candid adventures in being healthy.
If you're looking for a podcast that's equal parts hilarious and enlightening, well then welcome to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast.
Today's episode is sponsored by Love My Skivvies, a monthly subscription service for undies that are as cute as they are comfy. And ladies, these are designed for workouts and your everyday life. Just pick your size and your style, and you'll never have to think about what's in your panty drawer again, because badass women need panties that live up to our adventures. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today, we have FBG Jen.
Hey, guys.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hello.
And we have we have two guests today. It's Scott and Jenny Jurek. And Kristen, can you tell our audience about Scott and Jenny and your big fan and how he has changed you and the way you train right now?
Well, Scott Jurek is arguably he is one of the greatest athletes, ultra runners of all time. So if you've read his previous book, Eat and Run, you may have been really inspired by learning about his background and the way he trains and the way he remains focused and committed when he's doing things like, 100 milers or 150 milers. And, it's funny because I love the idea of the whole ultra marathon thing. But as somebody who doesn't even run more than a half marathon, my longest ever is a 25K, a lot of times I don't necessarily connect with those people. But there's something about him, and I guess part of it probably is that he is so passionate about his plant-based lifestyle. He's been a vegan for a long time. So going into this, I was really excited just because he has just in his own way through his books and through his actions, he's spoken to me and to so many people I know. And it was really neat when after we did this interview, I went and I did a run that night because there was no way I was going to not run. And as you guys might remember, I've been having a really long, slow comeback from an injury. And I've been taking a little bit of a cautious approach. And then after talking to him, and I'd been rereading Eat and Run, and I was like, you know what? I'm done being cautious. I'm not going to be stupid, but I don't want to sit back and wonder when I'm going to be okay. I want to push the limits because that's something that he's really done is he pushes and he pays attention to his body. He's got a background in physical therapy, so he certainly knows his way around, the muscles, and he knows when there's an injury, but he also understands that sometimes you can do a lot more on an injury than maybe you would think. So I went and I had just the most killer run. It was on the one hill here in Sarasota. and honestly, I kind of killed it and it felt so good. And I felt more like me than I had in months. And I've just sort of held on to that. Not every run has been like that. Not every workout has had that sort of a feeling for me. But more and more of them have. I finished that run and then I said, you know what? That felt okay. I'm going to sign up for a trail run. And it wasn't a long one. It was a 5 miler, but it was a little longer than I've been doing. And I certainly haven't been racing. But I just really felt inspired to, just push through and see what I can do. And I figure the worst thing that can happen is I realize that things don't feel okay and I need to stop. And that's all right. But it doesn't mean that I have to sit back and keep saying no to things that I would otherwise really like to do. So, thank you, Scott. And, it was awesome to talk to him and to Jenny both. I wasn't as familiar with her, but she's certainly got her own fascinating, interesting athletic background as well. So both of them are incredibly inspiring.
They make a great duo, don't they? I mean, they're on this interview together and they really are a team, and you could really feel how much admiration they have for the other one, right? It's really I think couples goals. I found them very inspiring.
Yeah. And it was cool because when we were talking to them, so the reason that they were on the show or are on the show today is to talk about North, which is their book that they wrote together about Scott running the Appalachian Trail and setting a world record for the speed in which he was doing that. And she was she was his support, which for anybody who's ever supported someone at just a regular ultra marathon, you know that that's involved. Supporting someone along something that is this sort of an undertaking is a whole other thing. And it was really neat to hear from her, her opinions on and her feelings about, the fact that, yes, she had to give things up in order to do this and help him achieve this, but, also hearing what she got out of it. And it's a lot because it says a lot about their relationship.
And you said your friends were really jealous that you got to talk to him?
Yes, it was cool. I posted a picture after my run. And, I have a lot of friends who get into our podcast because obviously we're talking about cool stuff and talking to awesome people. But man, did I get flooded with stuff from my friends. And I still, last week I went to a yoga class and ran into someone I hadn't seen before. She was like, hold on, I need you to tell me more. What was it really like? And I'm like, well, first of all, you're just going to have to listen because I'm not going to give it all away. And second of all, it was awesome. Of course it was awesome.
Well, it was also amazing that actually they both agreed to do the interview in a lot of ways because they had just had a baby. She literally just had a baby. So remember when we asked them to be on the show, their PR person was kind of like, oh, well, maybe it kind of depends. They just had a baby. And I was like, oh, well, then we can wait. And no, they graciously gave up their time, and you can kind of hear the little one in the background, which is cool. But I was just kind of floored by that level of generosity and them telling their story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and not only had they just had a baby, but they had also been on the road doing press for North for, I don't know, I don't even remember how long, a long time. They'd only been home for hours, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And just to give you guys context, so we normally, when we do these shows, I'm going to peel back the curtain here a little bit, but we use Skype, and then I Skype the three of them in, and I Skype in the person we're going to talk to. And what I think happened is Scott and Jenny, they were holding their son, and they were giving the interview. They were talking into a laptop. And unfortunately, sometimes I think when Jenny was holding her baby in a particular way, her voice didn't carry very far. So we got her a few times, half the time she spoke, we got her, but a few times we didn't. Unfortunately, I just couldn't use it. Because one of the things she said that I really loved is that he wore the exact same outfit on the first day he ran and the last day he ran, which was not planned. And it's just kind of really hilarious. But you can just tell by just listening to them, the warmth that they have and how much they love each other. And you're just going to love this interview, you guys. I think it was just one of our best. Hello?
Awesome.
I'm sorry. I totally agree. It was so great. It was definitely one of our best.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought that was it, that we were done.
So did I.
I was like, that's perfect.
All right. So we're just going to go. There you go. So here we go right into our interview today with Scott and Jenny Jurek. Remember, this episode is sponsored by Love My Skivvies, a monthly subscription service for undies that we absolutely adore. Ladies, you got to check them out at lovemyskivvies.com. Okay, that's LUVMYSKIVVIES.com. And for being a listener, you can even save 25% off your first month. Just enter the code FBG, that's for Fit Bottom Girls, FBG, at checkout, and you're good to go. Again, that's lovemyskivvies.com, LUVMYSKIVVIES.com. Today's guests are Scott and Jenny Jurek. They are the co-authors of the book North, Finding My Way While Running the Appalachian Trail. Scott Jurek is considered one of the greatest long-distance runners of all time. He has claimed victories in nearly all of ultra running's elite trail and road events, including the Western States 100-mile endurance run, which he won a record 7 times. He is also the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Eat and Run. In 2015, Scott decided to mark the end of a 20-year career as a competitive runner by undertaking what would be his mind and body's greatest test, establishing a new fastest known time for running the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. That's 2,189 miles. In order to set the record each and every day, rain, and there was lots of rain or shine, for 46 days straight and no days off, Scott would run, stumble, or scramble nearly 50 miles on average over a rutted, rocky, and treacherous trail. ascend and descend an average of 13,000 square feet, which is more than 113 miles during the entire course of the run. He needed to eat more than 6,000 calories a day as a vegan, and he still managed to lose 19 pounds, by the way, on an already lean frame. And by his side was Jenny, and every night they slept in double bed in the back of their van. We are so lucky to have them both on the show today. You can follow them on social media at Scott Jurek. Welcome to the show, Scott and Jenny Jurek.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on our show today. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today we have FBG Jen.
Hi.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hey.
So I'm going to ask you guys the first question, and we'll just bring it right to the beginning. In 2015, Scott, you decided to run the entire Appalachian Trail. Why on earth did you want to do this? What was the inspiration for this? And just my follow-up, Jenny, how did you respond the first time he brought this up to you?
Well, I was at a point in my career where, I was close to, I guess, officially retiring, feeling like, I had done quite a bit, but there was still a few things I had kind of left on my to-do list. And I'd always wanted to do one of the national scenic trails and go after a speed record, but the timing was never great. And I was also trying to still race a few 100-milers here and there and kind of doing them half-heartedly, or just not feeling like I had that drive and passion that I had when I was, at the peak of my career. And I guess I was looking for something new, something big, and something that would, push me to my limits, and something that I'd be fired up and get that passion back.
And my first reaction was, why? It sounded so random. It definitely, he said the Appalachian Trail, it sounded so random and like out of left field for us, because we love the PCT. We always talk about doing the Colorado Trail and Arizona Trail. And he's never really mentioned the Appalachian Trail. So I didn't really know what he wanted to get out of it. And it kind of seemed like he was grasping at straws. It just didn't seem, like well thought out to me. But then I understood why later.
So Scott, how was this different than like all the other races you did?
Well, it's completely different in the regard that we're talking a day after day after day type of challenge. Most ultramarathons are done in hours or done within a 1 day time frame. There's a couple that go on for, day and a half, 2 days, but most of my races, I'd be done, within 24 hours. And I think it was completely different when you think of this being, it's almost like, and I use this kind of, because it wasn't really a race, but it was like doing a 50-mile race every day, and even harder because Jenny there were no aid stations out there. There's no extra support. It's all on us. And so she had the, duties of like finding food and all these things along the trail. So that was completely different than the typical 100-mile or 50-mile type of race that I was used to doing. Would you say that it was harder physically or harder mentally? Oh, both of those. And then yeah. I would say like on some other level, like it was so hard. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in terms of my athletic career, on the mental component, on the physical side. It really pushed me to my limits. I mean, if you can imagine, a lot of people wouldn't even think about doing 350-mile weeks over the type of terrain that the Appalachian Trail covers, climbing 10 to 15,000 feet of vertical each day and descending that much over rocks, roots, and just doing that day after day after day. That was, the mental challenge was realizing, okay, I'm going to do that again tomorrow, and the day after that, the day after that. It was just, the magnitude of it was huge. Hard to wrap even my mind around it.
Yeah, times 100 over here. So, Jenny, you acted as support in this, as you just mentioned, Scott. And I mean, I know that's, that in itself is no cakewalk. So I'm wondering if you have some tips that you would offer someone who is acting as their partner's race support. And Scott, I also wondered if you have advice you'd offer a racer on maybe how to show their support proper appreciation.
I've supported Scott at a lot of races, but also just a lot of my friends at races, and it's something that I love to do. I love seeing my friends reach their goals. It's fun to be a part of that. But this was something where he was asking me to sacrifice my summer, like my entire, all the fun times that I've been looking forward to, all my own racing and stuff. And so it was kind of a big ask. But the thing is that for us, he's so supportive of me, of everything I do at home in my career and in my climbing pursuit. So this was I was happy to give back. I was super happy to help him find that spark or whatever he was looking for. And I think just advice for somebody who's gonna crew somebody is just to make sure you feel appreciated and it's balanced, because I didn't have any resentment and I wasn't bitter. I wasn't like, ugh, I am slaving over you, just because it was a fun adventure for me too, and he always makes me feel appreciated. So I guess I would just say do it if you want to do it and you feel like it's a healthy balance and a give and take for whatever relationship, if it's your friend or your partner. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
From the other side of things, I think, Jenny did mention, I think, you have to give as well. And I think sometimes a partner, and it could be male or female. I have friends, the female's the runner and the partner is the supporter, and they're not into the running aspect. And so I think it could go both ways. And a lot of times it can be a one-sided type of thing, but like Jenny mentioned, it's making sure that not only do you feel appreciated, or do you appreciate that person who's helping you, but make sure you give back. And I think that there needs to be a balance to that. There also needs to be communication. So when you're out there and you're toiling mentally, physically, it can be hard to still be communicative and supportive. And so Jenny and I, we had a few times where that there was some strain, but overall, because we're good communicators, because we understand each other, there has to be that mutual understanding and respect and trust. And those are things I think are great. In fact, this is probably one of those things where most people would avoid. I have friends that don't have their partners or spouses crew for them or pace them, because it's just like, no, we don't work that way. But Jen and I love to challenge the relationship, and I think it's a great opportunity. Anytime you enter into a relationship, you have to challenge it a bit too. So not always running 2,200 miles is maybe the best way to do that, but or for everyone. But
well, that leads me to ask you, what are the advantages and disadvantages of being with someone who's just as passionate about running or whatever you're into as you are?
Oh, for me, I would say I think it is helpful. I know, Jenny, she's done her own, running. She loves to run for climbing, and she's done the Ultra Trail Tour de Mont Blanc. She's definitely done a lot of hard ultras, so she knows what it takes. And I think you don't have to have a partner or a friend who's done the races. They just have to understand, oh, I understand, where they're going now mentally. I understand where they are physically. And if you can have that understanding, I don't think you have to have the experience, but it does help. Jenny, having challenged herself, physically in climbing as well as running, it helps for her to know, because she gives me a lot of tough love. And I think that's the other aspect too that can be hard sometimes. Partners want to comfort their loved one, and they want to help their friend if they feel like they're suffering, and you still have to be kind of that tough love, get out there, suck it up, we're not stopping now. You're going to continue on, and that's you have to find out that balance. And I think for advice on that level, make sure that you talk to your fellow runner or the person that you're crewing, and make sure they understand what works best, because they might not like the real gruff, tough love. They might need it a little sugar coated.
So Jenny, in the middle of all this, crazy feat, accomplishing everything, you're also recovering from a ruptured fallopian tube and a failed pregnancy, which, is obviously emotionally, but also physically, hard. Did being out there with him, did it make it harder to heal, easier to heal? What was that like?
It actually made it easier to heal for me. And it was, it was my idea too. Or, well, it was always initially his idea, but once he said it, it sounded great because I wanted to escape from the hospital and the doctor's appointments and blood tests. And like, I wanted to get away from everybody asking me like, how's it going? What's up? Any luck? Like we're just super open to all of our friends knew what was going on. And it just got to a point where I needed to kind of recenter myself and stop focusing on all this other stuff that was going on externally. And so it was really helpful for me to be in the mountains to heal and to focus on a different goal. We had this new goal that we were doing together, and it was just really great and refreshing for me.
That's awesome. And congrats on your new baby.
Oh, thank you.
I would love for you guys to take us through what a typical day on the Appalachian Trail looked like, if there is such a thing as a typical day on the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, well, there
okay.
there are definitely a lot of similarities day to day, but each day, that's what I guess made the challenge, fun and not knowing, I guess, because we didn't rehearse it, because I had only been on 20 miles, Jenny 3 miles. We didn't go out and drive our van to find all the places we need to crew. Every day was a completely different day, but it would start out.
It was the same. It was like Groundhog's Day, like for 6 weeks. He would wake up and he would just like drag himself out of bed. It was so just laborious for me to watch him because he would kind of not procrastinate, but I could tell he wasn't psyched to put on his dirty, soggy clothes and his muddy socks, his wet shoes, and just like to get that psych going. Like when he knew what he just went through the day before, and he's like, ugh, I have to do that all over again today. So he always said, oh, I want to get going before the sun comes up. I want to wake up early. I want to get in my miles, before it gets really hot. But he could never get out of the van. He could never like get going as quickly as he'd hoped. And I think it's that mental thing is like, I think he wasn't just like jumping out of bed to do another 50 miles on the AT. So it was a little bit painful for me to watch him get going because I had to be like, okay, dude, hurry it up, let's get this thing rolling. Total tough love, like almost push him out the door and drive away. But then once he kind of loosened up in the morning and got those first miles in, then his face would change, his attitude would change, his body would relax a little bit, and he'd be having fun again. But initially, the start was always tough for me to watch and to be a part of.
And Jenny's job of, I just had to follow the white blazes and, take care of myself in between the times that she would meet me. But, as soon as it wasn't like she got to sleep in, it wasn't like she kicked me out the door and like, oh yeah, I'll take a nap for 2 hours, because right away she had to go into the mode of, okay, where am I going to get gas? Where am I going to get groceries? Where am I going to, do laundry every few days? I mean, she had the logistical, challenge of like, how do I get all these things done while taking care of Scott and navigating these crazy roads? So for her, my day was pretty simple. It was, follow the white blazes down the trail, get to the next road crossing where Jenny might meet me, sometimes 10, 15 miles down the way. Some of the scarier or just more remote stretches, I would, try and make sure that she wouldn't have to stop at when we were by ourselves. So she would drive, sometimes meet me in 25 miles, and maybe she'd be lucky to find a larger grocery store in a bigger town or something like that. But she had to take care of all of those aspects. And for me, I got to run and hike, and it was actually, I wouldn't say easy, but it was a much more simple existence than what she had to do. And then people would be like, oh, where's the social media posts? And like, we haven't heard updates in a while. And part of that was that we were so remote most of the time, Jenny too. So it definitely became a challenge. And then we had people joining us. And a typical day, midway through the trail, we had all these people coming out, which was amazing, the support, but it also became, for both of us, trying to manage that And, everybody had tons of questions, and, a lot of people wanted to know where I was, and Jenny sometimes needed to take a nap or hang laundry or do some of those things too.
So when you're out there and it's, one of those long days and you didn't feel like getting out of bed in the morning and you're just putting one foot in front of the other, how do you occupy your mind to keep you motivated to keep running?
So a number of different things, depending upon, where I was mentally. One of the biggest things that I would try to do is focus on small goals. And that would be getting to the next, for instance, road crossing, okay, let's focus on the next 12 miles. Or sometimes it was, let's get to the next, mountaintop or, major landmark that might be just a few miles away, or get over the next climb. And sometimes putting one foot in front of the other, just focusing almost like a meditative, focus on the breath, focus on my feet, just to bring down and distill the moment into simple present aspects versus think too far ahead. Because again, if I had thought okay, I've got to do 52 miles today, or, I'm going to be covering, 1,000 miles by the end of, 3 weeks, it would just be too enormous. So breaking the goals down was really helpful, and breaking the day down was super helpful. And then having this newness of exploring, and that's what made it fun too, and taking my mind off of the sometimes monotony, because that's the one thing about the Appalachian Trail. If you can imagine, it's this big canopied trail that doesn't pop out into these open vistas. A lot of times you're stuck down in what's called the Green Tunnel. I like to give it that nickname. And so it can feel very claustrophobic. It can kind of feel like you've been in this spot for hours because a lot of things look similar. And you try to find the new things along the way, try to find the, unique aspects. I used music a lot too to get me out of the mental, slumps that I would have. And I would also think a lot about, Jenny and the struggles and the physical strength she showed in the surgeries. And I remember her almost hemorrhaging to death on our kitchen floor and not realizing what was going on when she had her ectopic pregnancy. So I would pull myself, back to those kind of things and draw strength from them, including my mother and how she had struggled with MS. And I'm like, I can't complain about a torn muscle, a bad knee, bruised feet, blistered feet. I have to, I have it pretty good right now. So just giving a different perspective was helpful too mentally.
Mm. What was the most unexpected thing to come out of your experience on the Appalachian Trail?
Oh, a lot of different things. I'd say Jenny.
For me was, we did not expect all these people to come out. And partly because I think we're naive. I didn't realize it was so close to all these major metropolises, and I didn't know that it ran through communities. And that was by design. The original planners of the AT kind of designed it to connect communities and make it it is such a social trail. So I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she definitely had the crazier job. I mean, I thought a few people might come out, but I didn't think, for me, from somebody who's trying to set a record and be in that mindset, it was difficult at times to answer the questions. And I would often tell people, hey, tell me about the area here, give me a little history lesson, or tell me about where you like to run, and just get them kind of giving me a little bit of a break, because mentally I couldn't sometimes answer questions, or I couldn't be on in that regard, because I had to focus on the task at hand. And that was a unique challenge. I've never done anything where I've told people hey, come on and join me as I'm trying to be in the zone, so to speak, and setting a record. And while it was hard and taxing at times mentally, and it probably was taking some life energy out of me, it definitely filled me and gave me so much perspective. I mean, there was a gentleman who came out who had just survived leukemia that spring and told me that his gift to himself was to run 30 miles with me, and he was going to run 30 miles with me that day. And so it really gave me a perspective of I don't really have it that bad, and it actually helped motivate me a lot more than I realized anything like that would. The other thing too is just the potential that we all have seems to be untapped. And I thought at many points along the way that I had gone as deep as I could go and dug in and tried to squeeze every bit of potential out of me. And then another situation would arise on the trail, 100 miles later, 200 miles later, and I would have to dig even deeper. And I think that was something I didn't think would happen time and time again. I thought, okay, I'll have to go deep a few times, but not on the level. It was like every day I had to find a little extra bit of strength that I didn't think I had. And that was what I think was so unique with this journey.
So I would really love to talk a little bit about the running community, because we're a week away after the Boston Marathon right now as we're talking. And I'm sure we've all heard about how the female winner, Desi Linden, nearly quit, but instead she focused on helping her fellow racers, and she credits that as kind of giving her legs back. She came back to win. And Scott, you've been known to stick around to cheer on like the last runner at races, even though you've been there for a long time and finished. So could you talk a little bit about what being a part of the running, and maybe more specifically the ultra running community and that racing community, what does that mean to you? And do you feel like you have a responsibility to it because of the level at which you compete?
I think it's a duty, and we all do it maybe on a different level. Like some people can't be around some races and volunteer unless they're in the thick of it and racing hard. I mean, so I can appreciate, some people have different levels that they can go out and support. Some people may not be able to go and help their friend break their own record. But I've always just felt, it's just who I am. It's part of the larger community, not just in the sport of running, but also just mankind and humankind. Like we want to help each other. And there is this sense of like being a part of it. Our buddy Timmy, who came out for a week, he's not even a runner. He's a climber that Jenny's known for a long time. And he was just like, gosh, it was so cool. He was like, it was some of the most original thought I've had on aspects of endurance. And so I think, it's really an experience. And when you help somebody achieve a goal and you're part of that, you get something out of it, and everybody is going to pull something different. But as anybody could tell you, like volunteering, it is like a volunteering type thing, but even deeper, because you sometimes have to do things that are tough to do. Like, Jenny sometimes had to see me in pain and just emotional and mental exhaustion to the point where she's like, gosh, is he ever going to be the same? And my friends had to do that too. And it was hard for them to do that. But I also feel like it's like they're experiencing it on another level. And without people like Speed Goat or Horty, we mentioned our good friends in the book, I think they also loved seeing somebody else kind of suffer on the level that they've suffered. There's like misery loves company. And I think we can relate, like, oh yeah, I want them to see what it's really like. And they also wanted to see like, what's it like on the other side? And that, again, it's all about perspective. I think running, I've been able to enjoy running for so many years because I love the different angles, and watching it from a volunteering standpoint or helping others is just as important as, running the miles yourself and achieving your goals.
Well, speaking of misery, you were running with a torn quad muscle for quite a bit there. How on earth did you manage to run and heal yourself at the same time?
Well, I started walking only, and I think lessening the stress was the biggest part. And I mentioned this. It was pretty mentally just, I was at the bottom of, basically I went from this high of like the first week I was feeling amazing, and Jenny and I were having a blast. We were getting into a rhythm. And then all of a sudden I get these two injuries that are so debilitating, so much pain, probably the worst pain I've ever been in my life. And then trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do now? And I remember telling Jenny, and I don't want to spoil the book, but, I was at the point where I'm like, let's just pack up the van. Like, we're done. Like, it's going to be over tomorrow. Like, I'll try and walk. But my buddy Horty happened to be down there helping us for a few days. And he was like, your body will remember how to heal itself. It'll find a pathway. And it really stuck with me. And whether it was experience, as well as trying to do all the things that help heal a body. We would ice consistently. I was not running a step and just making sure I'd lessen the load to my legs with my hiking poles, and just making sure to keep moving and get 30 some miles a day for those couple days, but just try to lessen the load as much as I could. And then my body found a way to heal itself. As long as I wasn't destroying it or stressing it too much, it started rebounding. And gradually over the course of 4 or 5 days, I was back running.
Wow, that's so incredible. Can you compare and contrast your first day on the trail to your last day on the trail? What those feelings were like, what those thoughts were like, how your body felt, what your expectations were? Take us through that, please.
And I want to have Jenny, yeah.
The funny thing is he's wearing the same outfit on the first day and the last day. I not planned or anything. I was just like, holy crap.
It was like, when you start something new, there's like this giddiness and this youthfulness. I was like a kid again. Running was just like fun. And I write about this in North that it was like the passion that I've had when I first started running. And then as the journey went on, by the end, I had lived a couple lifetimes and then some, and had this like wisdom, had this, like Jenny said, this real like physical, mental hardness to me, but also a softness. I think the trail, beat me down in a way that I went out there because I wanted to find a tool that could, pry me open and, help with a transformative process of really, and you have to get through all the tough stuff. And on the last day, it was almost like there were similarities in the first day. There was a newness and an ease, like Jenny mentioned, that came after all the struggles. And, as I was going up Katahdin, even though it was like one of the most challenging mountains that you traverse on the trail, there was like this lightness and ease to everything. Even though I didn't look like I was moving that fast, I just felt free. And Jenny noticed that in my movements. And I think that's what's really, I guess, transformative about the whole process, is that I almost kind of ended up in the same place, like that youthfulness. But I had to go through all this, aging and just really mental and physical kind of anguish to get to that ease at the end. And that's why I think we all do hard things. I mean, it's good to put yourself in a hard situation, a difficult situation. I don't know if everyone has to do that for 46 days or 2,200 miles, but, challenging ourselves is something that makes us better people, I think, in the end.
So let's talk a little bit about food, because that is, a pretty important part of doing this sort of endurance sport. And I know that, Scott, you've described yourself as a serious vegan, I think, and you guys are really passionate about the vegetarian lifestyle. So could you talk a little bit about, what's involved in food prep, what you guys need to do on a regular basis to fuel your lifestyle? And also, maybe you could just touch on the question that I know you get all the time, because I get it all the time as well, which is, oh my God, how do you get enough protein?
Mm-hmm. Some of the simple things. And I've after, being, vegan now for, it's going on 18 years, almost 19. I've found it to not be as, like, a lot of people assume, it's got to be so much work and so much hassle. And we've kind of just built it into the rhythms of our lifestyle. And I love to cook and spend time in the kitchen. So it's, for me, I enjoy finding, new foods. But for some people, it definitely can be effort. And if they haven't put a lot of effort into their diet or meal preparation, being plant-based can be difficult to start. But for us, it just kind of seems like part of the way we operate now. And getting enough protein doesn't seem like a struggle like it did when I first started, or, being worried about, am I going to be, strong enough and competing enough, and doing it for so long and being successful at it, I think has maybe eased some of those. But for anybody embarking on a new lifestyle change or a diet change, it can be challenging at first. And especially when we were on the AT, I think we had, I had these visions of Jenny, making me all these meals. I even brought the griddle for making pancakes, and just had this thought of like, oh yeah, she'll have plenty of time to do all these things. And Jenny is not the cook at home. She's more of my sous chef and helping out. So I was probably asking a bit more of her to think she was going to be cooking all the time. And just finding food out on the trail or out in these small communities was difficult for her. getting to your question about where do you get the protein, protein's not so much the issue. It's just sheer calories. And when I was on the trail, the things that I craved the most were not necessarily protein dense foods. I needed to get enough protein, but the big issue is just getting enough calories. So it was the fatty foods. It was the coconut milk Thai curries that I was craving. And I was always asking Jane, hey, can you get me some Thai food somewhere? And she'd be like, Thai food? I can't find, regular food. So I would, ask people like, oh, could you get us, some avocado maki? I would crave, fatty, rich things and tastes and textures that, I missed from home. And, I'd pour olive oil on my pasta at night. I even took swigs of flaxseed oil in the morning, sometimes choke those down because I knew I would need to make things dense. And Jenny would make these, like we call them, or started calling them fat sandwiches, basically, coconut oil drenched toast that she would make on the griddle, lathered with mayo, avocado slices, and vegan cheese slices when she could find them. And they're basically like these grilled cheese fat sandwiches. And one point where I was like, okay, these are almost too dense in calories, but I just needed to get tons of calories in me at all times. And I was doing, the Cliff Bars and the Cliff Shots and blocks, all the sports foods, but I was also, needing to really eat dense fatty foods. And then of course, get enough protein, but as long as you eat enough calories, protein's not a big issue on a plant-based diet. It's really, if you're active and especially trying to do something like the Appalachian Trail, it's really about getting enough calories. And for me, it was like 6,000 to 8,000 calories. And then I even still lost weight.
How did you sleep at night? Did you sleep well? Did you just fall asleep like a rock? I mean, and how did your body feel with all that lactic acid and everything?
I could sleep anywhere. I got very
You're one of the lucky ones.
I could sleep on rocks. I could sleep in, basically a bed of leaves anywhere. Like that was the difficult thing, is that I could almost sleep too well. And Jenny and I just had this small, it was basically maybe slightly bigger than a twin size bed, but about the size of a twin bed in our van. And it didn't matter. I could be sleeping. One time Jenny had to park on this road because there was nowhere else to park and it was at an angle. And she thought, oh, he's going to roll out of bed. But I could sleep on angles, you name it. And I would just be out. Because most nights, especially, after a week and a half, 2 weeks in, I was lucky to get 4 hours. Like 5 hours was sleeping, 8 to 10 hours at home. A lot of nights it was 2 hours, sometimes 1 hour on a rock here or with a bug net over me, go down the trail, maybe get another 2 hours type of thing. So I wasn't even getting to sleep in the comforts of the van, which, again, sometimes those comforts of the van, as simple as they were, felt like a palace. And that's where Jenny, she was always making sure that the van was, comfortable enough. And it was cozy. We had a great, I think, we had a really good time despite all the hard, difficult stuff we were trying to do out there.
So I have a two-part question. What's harder, sleeping with a newborn or sleeping on the Appalachian Trail?
Whoa, that's a difficult one. Seems like we can kind of jump into that mode of like, oh, I got to get up now. And that was like the hardest thing on the AT, was like getting up and getting moving. And now I don't have to run 50 miles. I just need to change a diaper or, help with some feeding and that sort of. So, in some ways I'd say it's almost a little easier.
Eat a cake.
We got some good training. Yeah, exactly. It's all about perspective. That's where.
Yes, it is all about perspective. So what is next for you two?
Like Jenny mentioned, writing this book has probably been more challenging than doing the Appalachian Trail itself. I feel like, we did the Appalachian Trail. We kind of got in the mode of like, finally, after 4 years, we were able to have a child, and Raven was brought into our life. And so it's kind of been crazy then, finishing this book and now being on book tour. So like Jenny said, I owe her a good vacation, or we owe ourselves a vacation. I feel like we've kind of just been going nonstop. And maybe next year we'll be ready for another big adventure. I know a lot of people, after following along, were like, Scott, what's next year? The year after I'd done the Appalachian Trail. And I'm like, these are kind of like big things. They're once in a lifetime. Maybe I could do a couple of these, but we're finally feeling mentally and physically. I mean, physically it took a while to recover, but I think mentally even more, because it really takes a lot out of me to really muster that grit and determination day after day. So we're excited to embark on something new, hopefully next year. And we'll have two two little wildlings to chase around as well while we're doing it. So another level of challenge.
For sure. Well, we will definitely be excited to hear about that when it's happening. But for today, I would love to ask you guys the last question, which is something we ask everybody who joins us for the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast. And that is, what's the last song you listened to before you joined us today?
Oh, that's good. Seems like we've listened. Yeah, we haven't. We've literally been on the road, and you think we'd like turn on the music at home, but since we got back we're only home for like 24 hours. I don't even think we turned on any music yesterday. It was almost like we just needed some quiet. So, yeah, that's a good question. But it was probably, like Jenny said, we probably had some Gregory Alan Isakov on.
Thank you both so much for making time for us. I know you only had like a few hours, to yourself, and you gave an hour of that to us. I mean, I can't believe how lucky we are. Really, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thanks so much for having us. It was fun.
Thank you. We always enjoy doing different podcasts, and thank you to all of your listeners.
Love this show? Tell us why in a 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it on the air. Also, make sure you are a subscriber. If you want to reach out to say hi or have a question about a recent episode, yay, well, feel free to email us at podcast@fitbottomedgirls.com. And if this podcast jives perfectly with your brand, consider sponsoring the show. Get more info by emailing advertising@fitbottomedgirls.com. Find all kinds of Fit Bottom goodness online and on social media at Fit Bottom Girls, Fit Bottom Mamas, Fit Bottom Eats, and Fit Bottom Zen. And if books and movies are your thing, check out the other podcast I co-host called Book versus Movie, which you can find anywhere where you search for podcasts. Thanks for listening.